That the views and opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of Love 101 FM.
Hello and welcome to the Morning Watch on Love 101 FM. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. A special listeners on love101.org, and if you're overseas and on the move, US listeners can access us at 712-832-8001. And if you're in the UK, 0330-332-6541, or join us via the Love 101 FM app that can be downloaded from the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. You can also join us on Love 101 FM Facebook and YouTube Live. In the first watch today, the Bedward story, separating the facts from the fiction. And in the second watch, is another state of emergency really necessary? Our social media question we ask, how effective or necessary are SOEs really? Please share your responses on our Facebook page, Love 101 FM, and also on WhatsApp, 876-997-3125, using the hashtag The Morning Watch. We'll share your responses later on in the program, but before all of that, here's I quote.
This morning's I quote, how wonderful it is that nobody need to wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Annie Frank.
Good morning, Shavoni.
Good morning, Rev. How are you?
I am cooler than usual.
Oh.
How are you?
I am good, thank you. I'm really, really good.
Yeah, you know that. Yeah, that is indeed a memorable quote that you mentioned a while ago. And you know, speaking about memorable, what do you remember about Bedward?
Dip them, Bedward, dip them.
That's it, Shavon. Nothing else. That's it. Eh? Just dip them, Bedward, dip them.
Bedward, dip them.
You need to listen to the first watch then. Listen to the first watch, Shavon. All right?
All right. Hold on a minute.
Bless you.
Hit them deep but not too deep. Hit them secure but feeling good. Hit them deep but not too deep. Hit them secure but feeling.
What an introduction. The first one.
On the family station. You're only $25,000, $50,000, or $75,000 plus GCT this Christmas.
25, 50, 75. 25, 50, 75.
Call our sales department now for this amazing deal. Christmas advertising packages for only $25,000, $50,000, or $75,000. Only on the family station, Love 101 FM this Christmas. Don't miss your opportunity. Call our sales department now. 876-968-9596. That's 876-968-9596. Call now.
Being a youth is difficult no matter what, and the COVID-19 pandemic is making it even harder. With school closures and canceled events, many youths are missing out on some of the biggest moments of their lives, as well as everyday moments like chatting with friends and participating in class. For young folks facing life changes and are feeling isolated and disappointed, know this. You are not alone. Your family station, Love 101, is standing with you. Here are 6 things you can do to practice self-care and look after your mental health. Number 1, recognize that your anxiety is completely normal. Number 2, create distractions. Number 3, find new ways to connect with your friends. Number 4, focus on you. Number 5, feel your feelings. And number 6, be kind to yourself and others. Linda Poindexter says, One small crack does not mean that you're broken. It means that you are put to the test and it didn't fall apart. Hi, I'm Shivani Blair, your youth ambassador. And remember, now more than ever, we need to be thoughtful about what we share or say that may hurt others. Happy Youth Month. Let's evolve.
I'll lean on you, lean on me. We got this.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Toussaint. Now, last week, in an Observer article entitled "The Truth About Alexander Bedward," the following was stated, and I quote, "Much has been said about cults in recent times. Several references have been made to Alexander Bedward, preacher, healer, Black nationalist of Augustown, as a cult leader. Sadly, several inaccuracies or falsehoods have been repeated, which continue to diminish Bedward's legacy." End of quote. So, what is fact and what is fiction in the Bedward story? And does it line up with cultic leadership, as we noted in recent times? Well, to answer these and other related questions, we have online Mr. Dwayne Harris, history educator and the writer of that article, and the Reverend Dave Gosse, head of Institute of Cultural Studies at UA. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Greetings.
Good morning, Dwayne. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, good to have you both with us. All right, based on your reading, gentlemen, who really was Alexander Bedward? And was he a cult leader? You first, Mr. Harris.
Thank you very much again for having me in your program. As I understand it, Bedward was a preacher, he was a faith healer, he was a religious leader, and a Black radical nationalist from Augustown who has made a significant contribution and a strong legacy to Jamaica. So that's, in summary, why I would say.
And was he a cult leader? Was he a cult leader, Mr. Harris, in your view?
I do not know exactly what is a cult and who is a cult leader. There are many definitions, but what I do know, the term cult is referred to people in a negative way. What I know about Bed was that he established a religious sect in Augustown, which was unconventional. If that is a definition of a cult, then fine. But that definition could match several other religious institutions. So I wouldn't be very hasty to refer to him as a cult, because the term cult is negative, and there are not many things I would perceive about the Bedward ministry and his life as being a cult and he being a cult leader. Certainly, he was a prominent religious figure, and that is what I would say he was.
Interesting. Dr. Gosse, what's your take on that?
Well, I do agree with Dwayne that he was a Black nationalist leader, a religious leader, but Bedward, in a sense, now carried with him the hope and aspiration of Africans living in a colonial world. And so for Bedward, religion was not separated from politics or society or economics. Therefore, then, he's a Black nationalist leader who carried the hopes of Black people are the button from Bogle to Garvey. He is that intermediary figure, right? Spanning Black nationalism, Black redemption, right? And the most popular preacher in Jamaica in that time period. The man had registered over 36,000 members with 125 chapters across the entire island.
How much? Hold on, there, Reverend Gosse. Say that again. How many members? How many members is it? How much?
around 36,000 members, 125 chapters, we call it denominations, or churches across the entire island. Only the western part of the island, from what I've seen, that never had a strong conversation of Bedouinite. So it is a movement, right? And he was very popular because his sermons were not just individual for individual salvation. His sermons were sermons aimed, right, at denouncing colonial class of people, colonial preachers, colonial doctors, and he provided the alternative. He provided free healing for the whole black people in Jamaica at that time period.
Interesting stuff.
Not only locally, internationally, because you also have chapters in Cuba and Poland. So you're not only a local nationalist, I mean, it's also internationally.
Yes. Now, what are some of the major stories, gentlemen, you consider to be fact versus fiction in regard to Bedouin? First with you, Mr. Harris.
Well, first of all, the issue of the visions. Bedwood operated on visions. Everything, how he got the call to do this ministry. He got visions to do that, how to set up his ministry, how to baptize, how to heal people from the water from Augustine. The order of his church service, everything was based on visions. That was a fact. He claimed with some credibility, some people could argue that his visions were based on revelations from God himself. Also, the issue of healing. Many persons went to Augustine. In your opening segment, when you were singing Dip Them Bedwood, I was hoping you would emphasize more the healing stream. He did say that just as how Jesus turned water into wine, he was commissioned to heal people using the water from Augustine. The water was bottled and sold, it was blessed. People went there and they were baptized. And as I like to say, perhaps Bedwood was a pioneer in the bottled water industry because people would buy the water and it would be it would be used for various healing purposes. There are stories out there that he was a con man, and much has been said in the media about him in recent times, and indeed while he was alive that he was a con man. I'm not so sure. Some people say that he was a madman. We'll come back to that later. But the biggest issue is the issue of flying, as to whether or not Bedwood did attempt to fly. In the article I wrote that was published last week, I said it was false, it was a tale, it was a lie. The truth of the matter is, in December of 1920, he did say that his spirit would ascend and a number of things. And I'm sure Dr. Gosse will comment on this later. As to whether or not it should have been a literal ascension is up for interpretation. Bedwood, and certainly Bedwoodites that I know, and I must say to you that I am from Augustine. I grew up in Augustine, and as we speak, I am in Augustine. So I have some level of familiarity with the physical place and actually real people who were Bedwoodites at the time and who died being Bedwoodites. So as I was saying, the issue of the flying, it is questionable, very questionable, and I would suggest that it was false that he intended to fly. What we have heard, and even as a child growing up, we heard that he jumped out of an ackee tree or a breadfruit tree or from the top of the church. And as I grew older and started to read about Bedwood, I realized that no such thing happened. He did not fall from any tree. Huh?
Nothing like that at all, Mr. Harris?
I'm sorry?
No, you're saying that nothing like that happened at all? It's just false?
No, I know that he did say his spirit would ascend, and that seemed to have been a spiritual thing. At what point in his career that he probably thought would have been the conclusion. He was an old man in 1920. But as to if he jumped off from a building or a tree or something and fell and broke his neck, I've heard several stories that he fell and died.
Tell you what, Mr. Harris, we are up on a break. Hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Between 2015 and 2020, there were 74,455 reports of child abuse in Jamaica. Report child abuse. Call 211.
The time brought to you by Child Protection Services is
7:16 on the Family Station, Love 101.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on J&B Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. J&B Bank will help you find a way.
Hello.
Hello?
Goodbye.
Goodbye? What are you doing?
I'm saying hello to peace of mind and goodbye to worry.
Oh, I'd like to say that too.
Well, with Guardian Life's new Ultimate Provider, you can secure your medical expenses in the event of critical illness ahead of time and benefit from their investment portfolio too.
Wow, so it's hello peace of mind.
And goodbye worry with Guardian Life's new Ultimate Provider. For more information, contact 888-367-5433 or talk to one of our representatives. Guardian Life. Live secure. Live easy.
Every Sunday, Love 101 FM brings you times of worship in music and the spoken word to encourage and uplift. Tune in at 8 a.m. for a powerful word from the Kingston Open Bible Church and for the blessing that awaits you. At 10 a.m., it's time for Divine Service with the Bethel Baptist Church, where words of encouragement are shared. Then at 11 a.m., it's time to pause for Sunday service at the New Testament Church of God shares the word of the Lord. The United Church service begins at 3:30 Sunday afternoon with words of inspiration. The Anglican Diocese brings words to strengthen you at 6 p.m. And at 8 p.m., Pastor Peter Burnett teaches lessons from the Holy Book during Radio Bible School. Be sure to join every Sunday to worship in God's presence with a series of specially prepared messages in words and musical inspiration by tuning in to Love 101 FM, the family station.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Toussaint. And in this, the first watch, we are discussing the gripping story of the Bedouin and all that he allegedly did. We're trying to separate the facts from the fiction, and we have online Mr. Dwayne Harris, history educator, and Reverend Dr. Dave Gosse, head of the Institute of Cultural Studies at the University of the West Indies. Mr. Harris, before the break, you were telling us that this thing about him attempting to fly, that nothing goes up.
Indeed. My contention was that he did have a convention, a meeting where people gather, the promise that his spirit would ascend. Some people apparently understood this to be a physical thing, but it did nothing of the sort happened. It was a high religious service, as I have been told by Bedouinites. But as to the story that he went in a tree and jumped off, crashed to the ground, broke his neck or leg or hands or some other part of his body, I do not know these things to happen. It is. So the story, I would say, has been embellished over the years. One simple event that said his spirit would ascend has turned into a flying story. But there have been many stories about flying away to glory, flying away to heaven. You know, R. Kelly famously sang that he believed he could fly. Bob Marley said he'd fly away when his work is over. So there's a tradition of aspiring to flight in black consciousness, but in terms of the actual attempt to fly, I would say it did not happen.
Okay, Dr. Gosse, what's your take on that?
Yes, well, let me just do these three things quickly. That he was no cult leader, but in fact, if you look at the symbol of his church, it is a cross embedded in a crown. Suffering is a mantra to achieve any kind of success. As a matter of fact, that manifestation in 1921 was one in which he was willing to suffer for the people's sake. So he was no cult leader in that sense. He was a sacrifice and became a sacrifice. Where today now, he's seen as a lunatic and a madman, as a sacrifice he was willing to pay. But he was no conman either. Somewhere around early 1920, the governor of Jamaica did an investigation to see whether or not he was really a man trying to rip off poor people. And the governor concluded, it's a report he sent to England, concluded that he could not make much money from the sale of cups and saucers that he was actually selling, because in their ritual, you have to have a cup and a saucer when they are doing their weekly ritual. And they concluded convincingly that this man was no con man. Thirdly, now the flying story now is a story now that took on proportion, because the gleaner, this man is public enemy number one, At his meetings, they send policemen weekly to trap him, right? So this kind of story, based on what I've read from the Bedouinites, the idea was that he was getting old, and the time has come that he was going to, bring some kind of closure. The point was, people now should celebrate that moment with Bedouin, and if your possessions hold you from coming, sell them and come. No, Bedouin had probably the most amazing communal lifestyle that probably ever existed in Jamaica, even to the moment. Any Bedouin who comes to Augustine will be well fed 7 days a week, right? So he was a man who practiced self-reliance, a community of saints who work with each other. Stories are told how, for example, if you hire one Bedouin, 10 of them come to work for you, right? And they share the money. They carry the thing to the market, sell it, carry back food, whatever, back to the commune. It's a communal lifestyle. So when Bedouin said to people, the idea was that if any position you have that prevent you from coming, sell them and come. The cleaner ran with that. Reporter ran to interview Bedouin. And so this whole idea of flying took off. Now, as Dwayne pointed out now, in African culture generally, we have a lot of stories about flying. I'll fly away to Zion, right? Fly away. It's part and part of the religious language and things. So idea of him flying away is not a literal flying, but then the greed centralized it, and then the next thing now, it took on its own wings of itself, and he was so accused. But they want to trap from 1895. They were trying to trap him and send him to that asylum from that time period, because he was public enemy number one. So you could understand then that whatever said.
Dr. Gosse.
Yes.
Dr. Gosse, no tree. He did not climb into a tree and waited, and then jumped off and injured himself.
Another another story that I read said that he was encouraging persons that their faith, they can do anything by their faith. And some reporter argued, made some story that two women tried it, and they went up into a tree and fell. Because they would say that whatever you want to do, you can do it by faith. So the story that I've read is not about him. It's about two women who tried it after hearing one of his sermons. So there are all kind of stories emanating, because the man was the most popular folk hero in the island. In fact, the very songs about him immortalize him as a hero. And then for the colonial authorities, he was a headache and a pain. They had to get rid of him one way or the other, and they couldn't.
Let me.
Court.
Yes.
So the asylum was the next.
Yes, I'm happy you went. I'm happy you went there, Dr. Gosse, because I want to ask you, and then I ask Mr. Harris, what are some of the main lessons for us today, from his life and his times, especially when we are hearing about leaders of churches today? What are the lessons that we can learn from Bedouin's life? Dr. Gosse.
I think that you evaluate a leader based on his willingness to sacrifice himself first, right? No, not the members. Not to go get the members, send you, put your name and put his name on your insurance policy. Bedouin is a man who thought about sacrifice and the common good of people. So you want to evaluate a leader whose track record is quite clear, right? Secondly, Bedward was one of those individuals now who was the hope of people, because he criticized the society and the issues, the injustices in the society, right? So there's a kind of leader you want to follow. Somebody would about themselves, that kind of individualism, and it's important because in Bedward's time period now, then the whole idea of the community as the whole. It's about the community, not about me, about all of us. That is so that Bedward taught his people discipline, and that we have to survive self-reliance. And he lived and taught it among his people. And even after his death, people with the August can tell you that the most ardent hard-working person where Bedward died, they're a model and example, because Bedward drilled into them this idea about self-reliance, discipline, relying upon yourself, but with God's help, of course, right? And ultimately sacrifice for others, giving yourself as this sacrifice for others, not hoping that your members will become the sacrifice. He, the leader, is the sacrifice. When he was going to march, by the way, in 1921, he told the members, look here, if you're not afraid, don't come. Don't come. Social defiance, we're marching today, and if you're afraid, don't come. Because he knew what was going to happen. The kind of leader you want to follow. And that's why, for many of us now, he should be labeled somehow in the category of us of our national heroes. Not physical national heroes, but in a sense that he must be immortalized as a significant leader in Jamaica's history that we must cherish and revere and talk highly about, rather than stories.
Interesting. Mr. Harris, you have the final word. What's your take on that? What are some of the main lessons we can learn?
My take on it is that history is a very important and exciting subject. It is very important for us to have a healthy understanding of our past, and especially our leaders. Many of the things that we have learned and assumed to be true, we have to unlearn them and look at them through different spectacles. And this is especially related to Alexander Bedward. He sought to have a relevant ministry at the time for the people, a ministry that empowered Black people, a ministry that called them to a high level of spirituality, a ministry that gave them some degree of race consciousness, a ministry that catered to their economic needs. And all of those things were relevant for the time. As to why his ministry didn't outlive him, or to any great extent after, is up for discussion. Issues of succession planning, etc., etc. But certainly he filled a gap in the time, and he laid a foundation for other types of religious movement, types of religious expression, and which has manifested itself in several ways, including Rastafari, Garvism, and other types of religious expressions in the country. So history is exciting. We should study history, know history, and understand and appreciate the legacies of our leaders and what they have contributed to national development, and not listen to every myth and fable that come about from hostile forces. The medical doctors didn't like Bedward because he was taking away their patients. Established churches didn't like him because he was taking away their flock, right? And the political elite distrusted him because he commanded the respect of so many persons. As a matter of fact, when Bedward was tried the first time for sedition, his lawyer, one Jewish lawyer by the name of Stern, became so popular that he became the elected representative for Kingston and St. Andrew. In those days, the entire parish was the constituency.
Wow.
Right. And he had a successful career. So it's almost as if many things he touched turned gold. But many things we don't know, because all we think we know about Bedward is the false narrative of him flying. Which
we have to leave it there.
I'm sorry?
To leave it there. Thank you so very much. To leave it there. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Harris and Dr. Gosse. Have a productive day. Listeners, the Morning Watch will return in just a moment.
From the west like a perfect pest, people dipping at the healing stream. Some come from the east like a big Lego beast, we go dip in a the healing stream. Some come from the west like a perfect pest, we go dip in a the healing stream. So dip them bedward, dip them in the healing stream. Dip them deep but not too deep, dip them to cure bad feeling. Oh, dip them bedward, dip them in the healing stream.
Now with no processing fees and no down payment, it's time to open the door to your own sweet home. The time by JN Bank is
7:31, folks, on the family station, Love 101.
This is the soothing sound of your finances being handled by Grace Kennedy Financial Group. And this? It's actually the relaxing noise of your car and home insurance, handled by experts you can trust. Trust Grace Kennedy Financial Group to do your banking, insurance, investments, money services, and more gracefully. Get to know us at gracekennedyfinancialgroup.com.
Experience crazy low prices during the Home and Things Mowing Madness sale. Yes, get big discounts on all mowing faucets, sinks, and bathroom accessories. Not to mention huge discounts on bathroom fixtures, lighting, windows, doors, and much more. Check out the new arrivals of tiles at ridiculously low prices. You can't afford to miss the Mowing Madness sale at Home and Things, Wallop Road and Constant Spring Road. Top quality products at unbelievable low prices. With prices this low, you think we're going insane?
Attention company officers of profit and non-profit organizations. Have you filed your annual returns with the Company's Office of Jamaica? Your returns must be filed no later than 28 days after the anniversary of incorporation or the date your last annual return was made. Failure to file will result in penalty of $100 for each day of delinquency, lawsuits, company removal, or imprisonment of company officers. For assistance, contact the Company's Office of Jamaica Compliance Department at 276-9600. File today, don't delay.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. Let's look at the newspapers to see what Jamaicans and others are saying and doing. In the Gleaner, no more lockdowns. Prime Minister says hospital resources won't be stretched to care for the unvaccinated. Interesting. And then Pfizer U-turn. 50 and overs get green light as government reverses vaccine restriction for kids. Second doses. And then Lotto scam link up. Fraudsters, gangs expand empire, amass gun arsenal. In the Observer, peacemaker shot dead at meeting. I think that was in Westmoreland yesterday. And then CHTA predicts strong winter rebound for Caribbean tourism. And then chimed out, French town votes on night church bells. Interesting. Well, coming next, we'll read some of the feedback from our social media question. How effective or necessary are SOEs really? Please leave a comment on our Facebook page, Love 101 FM Jamaica, or WhatsApp 876-997-3125. Soon come back.
Ready for another World of Worship Wednesday inside Alive, 1 to 5, November 17. Stick around for Power Blast at 2 o'clock. 2:15, we feature the group Elevation Worship as our worship artist of the day. Then at 3 p.m., we bring you the Alive Bible Challenge, ABC match number 7, which will feature challenger Dwayne Bryan of the Seven Grounds Church of God of Prophecy, who is going up against challenger Stephanie Ellis of the Power and Praise Ministries in Denby. All this and more will come your way inside Alive, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. with me, your host, Sarah and the Chirpy One on the family station, Love 101.
I am a man, yes. Strong man.
Can a man balance co-parenting with the mother of his child with whom he no longer shares in a relationship? What are some of the boundaries he must navigate? Are there do's and don'ts of co-parenting? Let's find out in the mailbox this Wednesday, November 17 at 5:30 p.m. when we discuss the topic co-parenting, the father's perspective. That's The Mailbox, the show designed for men, hosted by men, with guests who are men, right here on Love 101 FM, the family station.
Youth Zoom, zeroing in on zealous youth. Yes, for the month of November, join us as we showcase your people making big moves. Youth Zoom, every Tuesday and Thursday at 9:30 inside Love in the Morning. Zeroing in on zealous youth. November is Youth Month, so join us every Tuesday and Thursday at 9:30 inside Love in the Morning with me, Shivani Blair, your Youth Ambassador. Youth Month 2021. Come hear the stories, the testimonies, the hills and the valleys of how they overcame. Join us for an exciting story. Youth Zoom, every Tuesday and Thursday at 9:30 inside Love in the Morning. Zeroing in on zealous youth.
25, 50, 75. 25, 50, 75. Get a special Christmas advertising package on the family station Love 101 FM for only $25,000, $50,000, or $75,000 plus GCT this Christmas. 25, 50, 75. 25, 50, 75. Call our sales department now for this amazing deal. Christmas advertising packages for only $25,000, $50,000, or $75,000. Only on the family station Love 101 FM this Christmas. Don't miss your opportunity. Call our sales department now. 876-968-9596. That's 876-968-9596. Call now.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Dylan Toussaint. And so we go into the second watch. Is another state of emergency really necessary? That's the million-dollar question. Last Sunday, Prime Minister Andrew Holness announced states of public emergency in 7 police divisions. Also, he reportedly said murders in these divisions have increased by 16%, with over 1,240 murders across the island so far this year. But many are in a sense of deja vu, because the fact is we have been down this road before. So it's back to that million-dollar question. And to respond to this and other related questions, we have joining us this morning Mr. Kevin O'Brien Chang, political and social commentator, and Mr. Lloyd B Smith, CEO of the Western Mirror, political and social commentator. Good morning to you both.
Good morning, Kevin, and your listeners.
Good morning, Mr. Chang. Are you with us as well? All right, I think he's coming up soon. All right, good morning again, Mr. Smith.
Good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Yes, good to have you. Morning, Mr. Chang.
Hi, how are you, sir?
Yes, I'm well, and you?
Giving thanks. Good, Lloyd B?
Yes, I'm good. Good to hear you.
Yeah, man. Long time we talk.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, what are your opening thoughts on the recently announced states of emergency by the Prime Minister? Beginning with you, Mr. Brian Chan.
Well, we can either talk from emotion or we can talk from facts, right? Jamaica has the world's highest murder rate last year. We've had the highest consistent murder rate for the last 30 years. I've looked at murder statistics since 1960. I have from 1960 to 2000 to 2020. There are only 3 times in Jamaica's history we've seen a over 20% decline in murder. I've looked at it, right? Only three years. The first one was 1981, when murder fell by 46% after the infamous 1980, almost a civil war election, right? The other time was 2011. From 2010 to 2011, murders fell from 1447 to 1133, and from 2017 to 2018, murders fell from 1646 to 1287. All right, so that's 3 times only. Murder has fallen by over 20% from one year to the next. And so the Civil War year, well, we know that one. That was politics, all right? 2010, 2011, what happened 2010? State of emergency. 2018 to 2017, what happened then? State of emergency. So those who say the state of emergency does not work to reduce murders, they need to look at the statistics. They're only talking from emotion. They're not looking at the facts. Now the murders went back up, yes, when the state of emergency was removed. And that simply says to me, we should have kept the state of emergency longer. 2010, Commissioner Ellington, then commissioner, kept saying murders were falling because of the state of emergency. We stopped it. It kept down for a while, went back up. And we saw it in 2018, 19, 20 again. Murders were down. After a while, the effects were off, just going back up. So the facts are pretty clear to me. Looking at the statistics, state of emergencies work to cut murder. And if you want to keep the murders down, we need to keep the state of emergency longer. That's what I conclude looking at the facts. I'm not dealing with emotion. And one more statistic. One more statistic. From 2010, there have been polls about the state of emergency. The Jamaican public has consistently said, we want the states of emergency and we want them longer. The last poll was 2020. Don Anderson, August. 71% of Jamaicans said we want the state of emergency continued. 66% says they want it as a long-term crime fighting tool. All right, don't talk.
Mr. Smith.
I listen very carefully to my friend. Kevin.
Yes.
And I have a slightly different perspective. To begin with, I do believe that while the state of emergency has an immediate effect on bringing down the murder rate, we have to look at the bigger picture. And if we look at the bigger picture, I will posit, number one, that the fact that we have to continue to resort to a state of emergency strongly suggests that we have failed as a nation and as successive governments to deal effectively on a long-term basis with the problem of crime and violence. We are primarily focusing on murder, but the reality is that the society is crime-ridden. And if we are going to come up with an overall approach, a comprehensive approach, that will eventually not only lessen the incidence of murder, but of other crimes and misdemeanors, then a state of emergency will only have a temporary effect. I'm also concerned that if we prolong the state of emergency indefinitely, we may be moving towards becoming a police state, which may not be the best way to go in a democratic society. The other point I want to make is that while the state of emergency has successfully brought down the number of murders, I would love to hear from Kevin, what about the matter of guns? Because most of the crime, the murders being committed in Jamaica are done by the gun. And has the state of emergency, while bringing down the murders, to what extent has it been able to bring in the guns or to get sufficient guns off the street? Because that is critical. It is the guns that are killing, not just the people, but the guns that are in the hands of these brutal criminals out there. So I think we need to broaden the discussion rather than, as Kevin said, yes, emotional. So to me, the state of emergency is more of a gut reaction. But I think in the long term, we have to look at how we can save this country from being perpetually the #1 murder capital in the world.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, hold your thoughts. We are up on a break. When we come back, we'll hear the response of Mr. O'Brien Cham.
I am a man, yes, strong man.
Can a man balance co-parenting with the mother of his child with whom he no longer shares in a relationship? What are some of the boundaries he must navigate? Are there do's and don'ts of co-parenting? Let's find out in the mailbox this Wednesday, November 17 at 5:30 p.m. when we discuss the topic co-parenting, the father's perspective. That's the mailbox, the show designed for men, hosted by men, with guests who are men, right here on Love 101 FM, the family station.
DJ Sella go on with a whole heap of something like the 7 gigabytes of YouTube data you know get when you activate a 7-day digital prime bundle and a whole heap more end-use data moving from 6 to 8 gigabytes. Plus you get 49 gigabytes to enjoy more sports, music and movies with Digicel apps. A really whole heap of something that for the same price. Only $850. Activate your 7-day prime bundle in the My Digicel app today. Digicel, better together.
From generation to generation, Jamaicans have depended on J&B Bank to make the pride and joy of providing a safe place for their families possible. Now, with no processing fees and no down payment mortgage options, you can open the door to your own sweet home, a legacy to hand to your next generation. Visit jnbank.com to get pre-approved today. J&B Bank will help you find a way.
Forget ordinary. Now go compromise, oh nah, no way. I feel secure the best for my family. Me and my family, we go yummy. Go yummy. Go. Best in value, best in place. Me and my family, we go yummy. Forget ordinary, go yummy.
Welcome back to the Morning Watch. Thanks for staying with us. I'm your host, Toussaint, and we are now in the second half of the second watch. We're discussing the topic or raising the question, is another state of emergency necessary? And we have online Mr. Lloyd B Smith, CEO of the Western Mirror, Mr. Kevin O'Brien Chang, social and political commentator. Mr. Chang, Mr. Smith gave some interesting responses to your arguments. What say you?
Well, first of all, there's no question what Lloyd said about we have failed to control crime. That's a given. In 1962, we had 63 murders. 63. In 2020, we had 1,301 murders. 1,301. That's a over 20 times increase, right? When Bustamante and Norman Manley wrote the Constitution in 62, well, they didn't write it, but they were in charge. Do you think they could ever have imagined that Jamaicans, you have in 50-something years, you have 20 times the increase in murder rate? That Constitution was certainly not written for our current situation. We need to revisit it. I mean, we have to work within the Constitution, you know. As Mr. Holney said the other day, he said, clearly, there's an emergency. Within emergency, the measures are justified in our Constitution, and everything he's doing is abiding by the Constitution. There's a court challenge, which hasn't even been heard or anything yet. So people say that we're breaking the Constitution. We're not listening, and it's, again, sheer emotion and ignorance, because the case hasn't even gone to court yet, I believe, right? And we have failed at committing crime. I mean, we shouldn't have to have states of emergencies like this. But what choice do we have? Crime is out of control. About the police state, I agree it is a great risk. You have always to preserve our democracy. But I come back to the people of Jamaica. I'm a believer in listening to the people. 2010 poll, 71% want the state of emergency continued and extended. 2020 poll, 71% want state of emergency continued and extended. If the people clearly feel it is not a risk of a police state. And there's an argument going around that it's all poor young black men being locked up. Well, the bulk of the murders in Jamaica are poor young black men. When you cut murders, you save young black male lives. So if you really are worried about the rights of young black men, you want the murder rate to go down. You want lives to be saved because which would you prefer? You have a son, you're a mother, a young black son. Or my son get locked up, or my son get gunned down. Which news do you prefer to hear? Because if your son is locked up, he can be let out, and if he's innocent, he will be let out. But if he is gunned down, he can't be resurrected. So that argument is a big red herring. What? The argument.
Mr. Chang, Mr. Smith mentioned about the police state.
Yes, and
if we continue with this, we're becoming a police state. I respond to that.
And I said the people of Jamaica are the best judges of that.
And they want a police state.
They didn't say that, sir. If they felt a state of emergency was a police state, they wouldn't want it. Are the people stupid enough to believe that the state of emergency is a police state and they want it? That's really condescending to the people. The people are the best judge of, and what the people want to be is feel safe. And if they felt that they're becoming a police state, they would be calling for it. And have we felt a wider fear of being a police state, the state of emergency? No. You talk to people, they say, no, we feel safer. You hear them interview the communities, they say they feel safer, they want it back. You do not hear that cry except from a few people at the top. And I mean, I'm a Democrat, I believe in democracy, but I believe the people are the best judges of their situation. Right? That's the reality.
Yes.
And I come back to the point about the guns. Yes, we need to get the guns and that the trade with Haiti. But again, if you save lives first, when you have a big gash wound and you're bleeding, you bandage up the wound. And yes, if you keep the states of emergency longer, you will get the guns. At point to the states of emergency, as the people are saying, you start them for a short while, you stop them, you don't get to do, they don't have the full effect. That's why the people want them as a longer measure. And then we will get the guns.
All right, Mr. Smith, your time.
May I say, Kevin, we have to be careful that we too do not become overly emotional on this issue. But may I go on? The point is that when I said police state, I was saying that at the present time, Jamaica is a police state. What I'm saying is that on the long haul, for example, I think the Prime Minister mentioned in his presentation the other day at the press briefing about a 7-year span for the state of emergency. And I'm saying that if you go for the long haul, at some point, it may well be that we evolve into becoming. So it's not that we are a police state now. Secondly, I don't think...
Some say we're a gunman state now, Lloyd. Some say we're not. We're a gunman state now.
I don't think the average Jamaican fully understand the implications of what a police state is. So for them, as you, Kevin, mentioned the fact that we must be emotional, but I do believe that some of the responses from our people are also emotional because it is based on a matter of feeling safe and so on. And there's room for emotionalism if you're dealing with crime. But I want to extend the conversation a little bit, though, Kevin and esteemed host, to what do we do after the state of emergency? Because, yes, we're going to extend it and extend it. We have done that before.
It may not be.
At the moment it stopped, then we realize it. Furthermore, we have to realize that while we, for example, may see a downturn in murders in Westmoreland, St. James, Hanover, and the other areas in Kingston, the corporate area that are now under a state of emergency. But we see murders being committed in the other parishes that are not under a state of emergency. So does this mean that ultimately, if we are to follow the argument that is being posited, that the entire island should become under a state of emergency? And that is where the police state argument returns, because
Mr. Smith,
if we put the entire island under a state of emergency for a prolonged period of time, there's absolutely no reason to believe that we will not become a police state. And do we have the resources in the army and the police force to contain all of that? We have to look at interventions, Kevin. What about interventions? What about social and economic interventions? Why are we not hearing sufficiently about that? We have an education system that is not producing any worthwhile citizenry of this country because of how it is skewed in terms of assisting, especially our young men. So we have to look at the bigger picture and not just be confined to the fact that, yes, murders are up. I don't have a problem with the state of emergency being implemented, in essence. Yes, because if things get used, but I'm saying, are we going to use that as the only tool in the kit to fight crime and violence in this country? And I'm saying if that is the approach that this government or any other government is going to take, it is a wrong approach, it is nearsighted, and it will not in the long run solve the problem of crime and violence in this country.
All right. Mr. Branchang?
Well, nobody, Lloyd. That is a big red herring. Nobody has ever said state of emergency is the only thing that will cut crime. Nobody has said that. What people are saying is that state of emergency are needed to cut the crime in the short term. The government already has a medium term. Hold on, sir. Can I talk? Yes, because government, hold on, Lloyd, they already have Zozos. They have already agreed they need social intervention. That's what the Zozos are about. And yes, long term, you're totally correct, Lloyd. You're totally correct. The only long-term solution is a proper education of the country. So we need short, we need medium, and we need long. We're in total agreement about that. But you cannot get to short, medium, and long without short. So you have to have the state of emergency to stem the bleeding. Stem the bleeding. Then you sew it up with a bandage, and then you have to have it heal in the long term. That's a given. But nobody is saying, when I people say about is the only state of emergency, no, Mr. Holness is not saying that. But he said we need it now to stem the bleeding. And about the police state, again, nobody's saying it across all of Jamaica now. They want to go where the gangs are. That is what the police say. We need to degrade the gangs. The gangs are driving the crime. Wherever you have the huge gang activity, that's where we want the states of emergency. Again, nobody's saying they wanted it every parish in the country. No. Why would I want a state of emergency in Mandeville when murder is low? Nobody's saying that. So those two arguments, nobody is saying those things. And I'm telling you about the people. One more thing. Let me wrap up and you have the stage. One more thing. The people in the gang areas, they are living in a gunman state. They would prefer a police state or a gunman state. Anyway, I don't tell. In those gang areas.
Kevin, also remind yourself though that there's something called migration, and what has happened over these many years is that we are now seeing where the gangsters have the ability to migrate. They are very mobile. They have high-end vehicles. They have access to telephones, cell phones, and email, and all sorts of stuff. They have become very sophisticated. So for us to believe that the gangsters only operate within specific geographical areas is not perhaps the best way to think, because they can spread out. In fact, we have already begun to suspect that since the announcement of the state of emergency, several of them may have escaped from the areas that are now under the SOE and have gone to hang out in other parishes. And we have to be very observant, and I hope the police is also being preemptive in that regard, and as well as proactive, because next thing we see things happening in some of those areas. So that is a point we have to also take into consideration. But what I don't want us to get emotional about is whether or not, because I even think the question that was asked was self-serving. I would have preferred to say, the question should have been, instead of saying is it necessary, but rather, is it the only tool that should be used in fighting crime and violence? Because yes, if you have a serious situation, you have to do immediate surgery. Yeah, but outside of that now, you have to do the rehabilitative work to ensure.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thanks for a spirited discussion rather than an emotional one. And of course, heaven help us all.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Right.
Have a good day, gentlemen.
Take care. All the best.
Thank you, listeners.
All the best, everybody. Cool. Take care.
Thank you, listeners, for being with us. Join us again tomorrow as we continue to set the stage for the discussion of topical issues. For information or get copies of this program, call our production department at 876-968-9596-7. This has been the morning with our producer, Miss Kathy Gale, and our guests. I'm Dylan Toussaint. Hand you back to Love in the Morning with Shavoni Blair.
Thank you, folks. This is Love 101 FM, and it is the family station. It's 8 o'clock, and it's time for the program Forwarding